There is a silence that exists before thought, before the first whisper of your name in your own mind, before you became what others told you to be. Ibn Arabi knew this silence. He walked through it, breathed it, dissolved into it, and emerged from it, carrying secrets that most people spend their entire lives never discovering. These are not secrets hidden by choice, but secrets hidden by nature. Truths so intimate, so shattering, that they can only be experienced when everything you think you are falls away. Most people believe meditation is about calming the mind, about finding peace in a chaotic world, about breathing deeply and letting stress dissolve. And while those things may happen, they are merely the surface ripples of an ocean so deep that most never dare to dive. Ibn Arabi taught something far more dangerous, far more transformative. He taught that meditation is not about finding yourself, but about losing yourself so completely that what remains is not you at all. What remains is something older, vaster, eternal, something that was never born and can never die. The great Sufi mystic understood what modern meditation teachers rarely speak of, that true meditation begins where your identity ends, that the thoughts you try so desperately to silence are not the enemy. They are messengers revealing the prison you've built around your own awareness, and that the breath you take, the one you've been taking unconsciously since birth, carries within it a secret name, a divine remembrance that has been whispering itself through you all along. This is not a comfortable truth. It is not meant to be packaged into a 10-minute morning routine or a mindfulness app that promises peace without transformation. Ibn Arabi's teachings cut deeper than that. They reach into the part of you that knows, beyond all doubt, that something essential has been forgotten, that beneath all the noise, all the becoming, all the endless movement toward some imagined future self, there exists a stillness so complete that it frightens you more than any chaos ever could. The breath that remembers before you do. Your breath has been praying since before you learned words, every inhale, every exhale, a sacred rhythm that exists without your permission, without your awareness, without your control. Ibn Arabi recognized this. He saw that the breath is not merely a biological function, not just oxygen feeding cells and keeping the body alive. The breath is the bridge between the seen and the unseen, between the temporal self that thinks it exists independently and the eternal presence that breathes through all things. When you sit to meditate, the first instruction is always the same across traditions. Observe your breath. But Ibn Arabi went further. He didn't just want you to observe the breath. He wanted you to recognize what the breath is actually doing. Each inhalation is a drawing in of divine presence. Each exhalation is a releasing of everything that obscures that presence. This is not metaphor. This is not poetic language meant to inspire. This is the actual mechanics of how consciousness interfaces with the absolute. The Sufis call this practice muraqabah, watchfulness. Not the watchfulness of a guard standing at a gate, suspicious and tense, but the watchfulness of a lover waiting for the beloved's footsteps in the dark. You sit. You close your eyes. You bring your attention to the natural flow of breath and you wait. Thoughts will come, they always do. Waves of memory, anxiety about the future, judgments about whether you're doing it correctly, comparisons with how you felt yesterday, plans for what you'll do when the session ends. Let them come, let them pass, return to the breath. This returning, this constant, gentle returning, is not a failure of meditation. It is meditation itself. Because what you are training is not the absence of thought, but the ability to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that watches thoughts arise and dissolve. You are the space in which the entire drama of selfhood performs its elaborate dance. And the breath, steady and rhythmless in its naturalness, becomes the anchor that keeps you tethered to this recognition. But Ibn Arabi knew something else, something that transforms this practice from a technique into an encounter with the divine. He taught that when the breath becomes conscious, when you truly inhabit each inhalation and exhalation with full presence, something shifts. The breath stops being your breath. It becomes the breath of the divine breathing through you, as you, in you. This is the secret they don't tell you. Meditation is not about you becoming more present. It's about you disappearing so completely that only presence remains. The hidden name you've been speaking all along. There is a form of remembrance, a dhikr, that exists beneath all other practices. The Sufis speak of dhikr of the tongue, the verbal repetition of divine names, the rhythmic chanting that fills mosques and gathering circles, the audible remembrance that anyone can hear. Then there is dhikr of the heart, the silent repetition, the remembrance that resonates in the chest, that vibrates through the emotional body, that can be felt but not heard. But Ibn Arabi pointed to something deeper still. The dhikr of the soul, the remembrance that happens before language, before intention, before you. This is the remembrance that was occurring before you were born and will continue after your body returns to dust. It is the remembrance encoded in your very existence. When you say I am, you are speaking a fragment of the only true statement that can be made. God is. When you breathe, the air entering your lungs carries the same creative force that spoke the universe into being. When your heart beats in your chest, it drums out a rhythm that echoes the first and final pulse of all creation. Most people approach spiritual practice as if they need to create something that doesn't exist. They believe they must generate devotion, manufacture presence, construct a connection to the divine through effort and discipline. Ibn Arabi taught the opposite. He said the connection is already there, perfect, complete, unbroken. What needs to happen is not creation but recognition, not effort but surrender, not doing but allowing. This is why he emphasized the practice of silent dhikr, the remembrance that requires no movement of the lips, no audible sound, not even the formation of words in the mind. You sit in stillness, you rest in the space between breaths, and you listen, not with your ears but with something deeper, something that existed before ears, before sensation, before the division of self and other. And in that listening, you begin to hear it. The constant hum of existence itself, the vibration that sustains all things, the name that is being spoken through you in every moment, whether you acknowledge it or not. The Quran says, "Remember me, and I will remember you." Ibn Arabi understood this verse as describing a sacred reciprocity, an echo that reverberates between the human heart and the divine presence. When you remember God sincerely with your whole being, something extraordinary happens. You become the location where God remembers himself. Your consciousness becomes the mirror in which the divine sees its own reflection. You are no longer separate from what you worship. The lover and beloved merge into a single reality that was never actually divided. This is not metaphor. This is not symbolism. This is the direct experience that meditation, practiced with the depth and sincerity Ibn Arabi prescribed, makes accessible. And it is terrifying. Because when you truly taste this recognition, when you feel the boundaries of your separate self becoming transparent, permeable, finally dissolving altogether, you realize that everything you've been taught about who you are is a beautiful, necessary lie. The solitude that contains everything. There is a practice in Sufism called khalwa, spiritual retreat. It means withdrawing from society, from people, from all the noise and demands and endless negotiations of social existence. It means finding a quiet space, often a small cell or room, and sitting there alone with nothing but your own consciousness and the divine presence that saturates all space. For Ibn Arabi, khalwa was not escapism. It was not running away from the world or rejecting the beauty and complexity of human relationship. It was instead a necessary descent into the depths of the self, a journey that must be taken alone because no one else can take it for you. He wrote about the importance of solitude not as a permanent state, but as a regular practice, a returning to the interior, a checking in with the depths, a remembering of what gets forgotten in the constant external focus that ordinary life demands. When you sit alone in meditation, especially for extended periods, something begins to surface. All the material you've been suppressing, all the emotions you've been too busy to feel, all the questions you've been avoiding, they rise up. This is uncomfortable. This is why most people cannot sit still for more than a few minutes without reaching for their phone, turning on music, finding any distraction that will interrupt the discomfort of simply being with themselves. But Ibn Arabi taught that this discomfort is not a problem to solve. It is the doorway to something far more vast. When you stay with the discomfort, when you resist the impulse to escape or suppress or distract, something shifts. The discomfort begins to reveal its structure. You see that it is not one solid thing but a constellation of thoughts, sensations, memories, fears, all swirling together. And as you watch this swirling with patient awareness, as you allow it to be exactly as it is without trying to fix or change it, the swirling begins to slow. Eventually, beneath all the turbulence, you discover a stillness. Not the stillness of absence, not the numbness of dissociation, but a stillness that is intensely alive, aware, present. Ibn Arabi called this the heart's mirror. When the surface of the heart becomes still, when the constant agitation of thoughts and emotions settles, the heart becomes capable of reflecting truth. And what it reflects is not something external to you, but the deepest reality of what you are. This is the paradox of solitude. When you go deep enough into your own aloneness, you discover you were never alone. The separate self that seemed so solid, so real, so obviously the center of your experience, it dissolves. And what remains is not isolation but intimacy, not loneliness but union, not the small frightened eye, but the vast eternal presence that has been looking through your eyes all along. Ibn Arabi understood that most people are afraid of solitude because they are afraid of themselves. They have filled their lives with so much noise, so much distraction, so much constant doing, that they have never actually met themselves. And when the noise stops, when the distractions are removed, when there is nothing left to do but be, they panic. Because what surfaces is not always pleasant. What surfaces is the accumulated pain of decades, the grief never fully grieved, the anger never fully felt, the fear that has been driving decisions from behind a curtain. But this is the medicine, this is the healing. Not in bypassing these difficult emotions, not in using meditation as a spiritual anesthetic to numb yourself to reality, but in finally having the courage to feel everything you've been avoiding. And when you do, when you sit in Khalwa and allow whatever wants to arise and you meet it with compassion rather than resistance, something profound happens. The energy that was locked in those unfelt emotions begins to release. The heart begins to open. The tight knot of self-protection begins to loosen. And in that opening, in that loosening, you discover that the solitude you feared was actually the doorway to the most profound connection possible. Because you are no longer connecting from the defended, contracted, separate self. You are connecting from presence, from openness, from the heart that has been polished by the patient work of sitting alone with all that you are. The mirror that reflects what cannot be named, Ibn Arabi, spoke often of the heart as a mirror. But this is not the heart as an organ pumping blood through the body. This is the subtle heart, the spiritual heart, the lataif al-qalb that exists in the realm between the physical and the divine. This heart is the faculty by which human beings perceive truth directly, without the mediation of thought or reason. In ordinary consciousness, this mirror is covered with dust. The dust of attachment, of false beliefs, of wounds and traumas, of all the ways we've learned to protect ourselves from the vulnerability of being fully open to existence. The practice of meditation, especially the deep and sustained practice Ibn Arabi prescribed, is the process of polishing this mirror, not through force or aggression, but through patient, gentle, persistent attention. Every time you sit in stillness, you are polishing. Every time you observe a thought without getting lost in it, you are polishing. Every time you feel an emotion fully without acting it out or suppressing it, you are polishing. And slowly, over time, the mirror becomes clearer. The reflections become sharper. And eventually the mirror becomes so clear that it reflects reality without distortion. But here is what they don't tell you about the polished heart. What it reflects is not separate from you. The divine that is reflected in the heart's mirror is not something external, not a distant God in heaven looking down. The divine is the very substance of your awareness, the presence that is aware, the consciousness within which all experience arises. When the heart becomes clear enough, you realize that what you've been seeking has been doing the seeking. The one who practices is the very presence you're practicing to realize. Ibn Arabi called this wahdat al-wujud, the unity of being. Not that everything is God in some simple pantheistic sense, but that existence itself is singular, unified, one. The appearance of multiplicity, of separation, of distinct individual selves moving through space and time. This is real on one level, But on a deeper level, it is like the waves on the surface of the ocean. Each wave appears distinct, has its own shape and movement, but it is never separate from the ocean. It is the ocean expressing itself in wave form. You are that, not as a belief to adopt, not as a philosophy to intellectually understand, but as a direct recognition that occurs when the mirror of the heart becomes clear. This recognition is not comforting in the way most people want comfort. It doesn't reinforce your sense of being a special individual on a spiritual journey. Instead, it dissolves that individual altogether. And what remains is not nothing, not emptiness in the sense of absence, but emptiness in the sense of infinite potential, infinite presence, the void that is pregnant with all possible forms. This is why meditation, practiced deeply, is not about self-improvement. It's about self-dissolution. It's not about becoming a better version of you. It's about seeing through the entire project of becoming, recognizing it as a beautiful play of consciousness that has no ultimate reality. And when that recognition dawns, when the mirror is finally clear enough to reflect this truth without distortion, there is a kind of death, the death of who you thought you were, the death of your stories, your identity, your carefully constructed sense of being a separate self navigating a world. But this death is not an ending, it is a beginning, because what dies was never truly alive. It was a fiction, a useful fiction perhaps, but not real in the way you believed it to be. And what emerges in its absence is life itself, raw, immediate, unconditioned, free. The stillness between breaths. There is a moment, barely perceptible, that exists between the inhale and the exhale. A gap, a pause, a sliver of silence that most people never notice because they've never paid attention to their breath closely enough. But Ibn Arabi noticed, and he taught that this space between breaths is a doorway. When you bring your awareness to this gap, when you rest in the stillness between the incoming and outgoing breath, something extraordinary becomes available. In that moment, there is no doing. The body is not inhaling. The body is not exhaling. There is simply a pause, a suspension, a moment of absolute stillness. And in that stillness, if you are present enough to notice, you can feel the presence of something vast. This is not something you create. It is not something you achieve through effort. It is always there, always has been, always will be. But ordinary consciousness moves too quickly to notice it. Ordinary consciousness is always focused on the next thing, the next thought, the next breath, the next moment. It never rests in the nowness of now. It never inhabits the present so completely that past and future dissolve. But when you practice resting in the gap between breaths, you begin to taste timelessness. Because in that gap, there is no movement. And without movement, there is no time. Time is created by change, by things moving from one state to another. But in the stillness between breaths, nothing is moving. Nothing is changing. There is only presence. Ibn Arabi taught that this timeless presence is not separate from the divine. It is the divine experiencing itself through your awareness. When you rest in the gap, you are not a person resting. You are presence itself, recognizing its own nature. This is why the practice is so simple and yet so profound. It requires nothing but attention, but that attention must be total, complete, unwavering. Most people, when they begin meditation, try to control the breath. They breathe deeply, rhythmically, creating a pattern they believe will induce relaxation or altered states. And while there is value in conscious breathing techniques, Ibn Arabi pointed to something deeper. He taught that the breath should be allowed to flow naturally, without interference. You don't breathe. The breath breathes itself. You are simply the witness, the awareness in which this breathing occurs. And when you witness the breath with this quality of non-interference, when you allow it to be exactly as it is without trying to improve or change it, the breath begins to teach you. It shows you that everything happens by itself, that there is no separate doer making things happen. The breath breathes, the heart beats, thoughts arise, sensations occur, and none of it requires your control or management. It all happens within awareness, by awareness as awareness. This recognition that you are not the doer but the awareness in which all doing occurs is liberating in a way that is difficult to describe. Because so much of human suffering comes from the belief that we must control life, that we must manage outcomes, that we are responsible for making things happen. But when you see, through the simple practice of observing the breath, that life is happening by itself, that the universe is unfolding without your intervention, a deep relaxation becomes possible. Not the relaxation of laziness or apathy, but the relaxation of trust, of alignment, of allowing. The practice nobody wants to hear about. Here is the truth that no one wants to hear. Meditation is not easy. It is not peaceful. It is not always pleasant. In fact, if you are doing it correctly, it will be one of the most challenging things you've ever done. Because what you are doing when you sit in stillness is facing everything you've spent your entire life running from. Ibn Arabi knew this. His teachings on Khalwa, on solitary retreat, were not about finding a comfortable quiet space to relax. They were about entering the desert of the self, the wilderness where all your demons live, and sitting there until they reveal themselves to be not demons at all, but unintegrated parts of your own consciousness. When you commit to a regular meditation practice, especially one that involves extended periods of sitting, you will encounter resistance. Your mind will offer you 1,000 reasons why you should get up, why this is a waste of time, why you have more important things to do. Your body will ache, your emotions will surge, old memories will surface, sometimes with such intensity that you feel like you're reliving them. This is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. This is a sign that you're doing it right. What is happening in these moments is a kind of purification. The suppressed material, the unfelt emotions, the unprocessed experiences, they are rising to the surface to be seen, felt, and released. But this release doesn't happen through catharsis or expression. It happens through witnessing. You sit with whatever arises. You allow it to be there. You feel it fully without acting on it, without pushing it away, without getting lost in the story of it. And in that allowing, in that radical acceptance, the energy locked in these patterns begins to dissolve. Ibn Arabi described this process as a kind of death. The false self, the ego structure that has been organizing your personality and guiding your life, begins to die. And dying is painful. Not physically painful necessarily, though sometimes it manifests that way, but psychologically painful. Because the ego does not want to die. It will fight for its survival. It will create doubt, fear, anxiety, distraction, anything to pull you out of the stillness where its dissolution becomes inevitable. This is why the practice requires patience. Not just patience in the sense of waiting, but patience in the sense of compassion. For yourself, for the difficulty of the process, for the slow pace of real transformation. Because transformation, the kind that actually changes you at the root level, does not happen quickly. It happens slowly, incrementally, through the accumulation of thousands of moments where you chose presence over distraction, stillness over reactivity, awareness over unconsciousness. Ibn Arabi spoke of the importance of consistency, not intense practice followed by long breaks, but regular daily practice that becomes as natural as eating or sleeping. Even just a few minutes each day, done with sincerity and full attention, is more valuable than occasional marathon sessions. Because what you are training is not the ability to have profound experiences, though those will come, but the ability to remain present, to stay with what is, to not abandon yourself when things become difficult. And things will become difficult. There will be days when you sit down to meditate and feel absolutely nothing. The presence that felt so vivid yesterday is nowhere to be found. The peace you experienced has evaporated. You feel restless, agitated, frustrated. This is normal. This is part of the process. Ibn Arabi taught that the spiritual path is not a straight line of continuous progress. It is a spiral, circling deeper and deeper into the same territory, each time from a slightly different angle, each time revealing something new. There will also be days when you sit down to meditate and feel like you're falling apart. Emotions you don't recognize surge through you. Memories surface that you don't remember having. Your sense of identity becomes slippery, uncertain. In these moments, it is crucial to remember that this is not pathology. This is not mental illness. This is what happens when the structures of self begin to loosen, when the boundaries you've taken for granted start to become permeable. It can be disorienting, it can be frightening, but it is also the doorway to something far more real than the comfortable prison of fixed identity. The union that was never actually broken. At the deepest level of Ibn Arabi's teaching, is a recognition that most people find either incomprehensible or heretical. You are not separate from God. You have never been separate from God. Separation is an illusion, a necessary illusion perhaps, useful for the functioning of daily life, but an illusion nonetheless. This is not to say that you are God in the sense of being the ultimate creator of the universe. That would be a misunderstanding, a confusion of levels. What Ibn Arabi taught is more subtle. He said that existence itself is singular. There is only one reality, one being, one consciousness expressing itself through infinite forms. The tree outside your window, the thought in your mind, the sensation in your body, the breath moving through you, all of it is the same presence, the same reality, appearing in different forms. When you meditate deeply, when the mind becomes still enough and the heart becomes clear enough, you begin to recognize this unity directly, not as a concept, not as a belief, but as the actual texture of your experience. You feel the aliveness in your own body, and you recognize it as the same aliveness that animates all beings. You watch a thought arise in your mind, and you recognize it as the same creative force that births stars and galaxies. You breathe and you know beyond all doubt that the breath moving through you is the same breath that spoke the universe into being. This recognition is what the Sufis call fana, annihilation. But annihilation of what? Not of consciousness, not of awareness, not of life itself. What is annihilated is the illusion of being a separate, isolated self. What is annihilated is the belief that you are a noun, a thing, a fixed entity moving through space and time. What remains is pure presence, pure awareness, pure being, without center, without boundary, without the artificial division of self and other. And from this recognition comes what the Sufis call baqa, subsistence. After the death of the false self, there is a kind of resurrection. But what is resurrected is not the old self, it is a new way of being in the world, a way that is grounded not in separation but in union, not in fear but in love, not in grasping but in allowing. You continue to function as a person, continue to have thoughts and emotions and preferences, continue to navigate the practical demands of human life. But you do so from a completely different center, from no center at all actually, from the recognition that what you are is the entire field of experience, not a localized point within it. Ibn Arabi taught that this recognition is not the end point of the spiritual path, but the beginning. Because once you know this unity directly, once you have tasted the non-separation that is your true nature, everything changes. How you relate to others changes, because you see your own face looking out from every pair of eyes. How you relate to difficulty changes, because you recognize that the challenges you face are the universe's way of revealing itself to itself. How you relate to death changes, because you know that what you truly are was never born and can never die. This is the ultimate secret of meditation, the one that Ibn Arabi spent his entire life pointing toward in his writings. Meditation is not a technique for self-improvement. It is not a method for achieving peace or happiness or success. It is a practice of remembrance, remembering what you have always been, what you cannot not be, what you will always be regardless of what happens in the story of your life. And when that remembrance becomes constant, when it saturates every moment of your experience, you have not become enlightened. You have simply stopped pretending to be something other than what you are. The heart that contains. All forms. Ibn Arabi wrote a line that has echoed through Sufi tradition for centuries. My heart has become capable of every form, a pasture for gazelles, a temple for idols, the Kaaba for pilgrims, the tablets of Torah, the Quran's parchment. This is not poetry in the ordinary sense. This is a description of what happens to the heart when it is fully opened, fully polished, fully surrendered to the divine presence that moves through all things. Most people live from a contracted heart. They have preferences about how life should be, ideas about what is good and what is bad, rigid boundaries around what they can accept and what they must reject. This contraction is natural, protective, necessary for survival in many contexts. But it is also the source of tremendous suffering. Because life does not conform to our preferences, reality is not limited by our ideas of how things should be. And when we meet life with a contracted heart, with a heart that can only say yes to certain things, and no to everything else, we are in constant conflict with what is. Ibn Arabi's meditation practice is, at its core, a practice of expanding the heart. Not expanding it to become larger, but expanding it to reveal its true nature as limitless, as capable of containing everything. When you sit in stillness and allow whatever arises to be there, when you meet your experience with acceptance rather than resistance, the heart begins to open. It becomes spacious. It becomes capable of holding joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, beauty and ugliness, all without preference, all without rejection. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is not pretending that suffering doesn't hurt, or that injustice doesn't matter. It is, instead, the recognition that the heart is vast enough to include everything, that nothing is foreign to it, that all of existence is the beloved in different disguises. And when you live from this recognition, when your heart has become this expansive, your actions in the world don't become passive or indifferent. They become more effective, more compassionate, more aligned with the deepest truth of things. Because when your heart can contain all forms, you no longer need to defend against life. You no longer need to construct elaborate strategies to avoid pain or secure pleasure. You can meet each moment as it arrives, with full presence, with full openness, with the understanding that whatever is happening is what needs to happen for the unfolding of the whole. This doesn't mean you don't have preferences or that you don't work toward outcomes you value. It means you hold those preferences lightly, without attachment, without the belief that your happiness depends on life conforming to your will. Ibn Arabi taught that the heart capable of every form is the heart that has realized its identity with the divine heart. Not that your individual heart has become God's heart, but that the distinction between the two has dissolved. There is only one heart, one love, one presence experiencing itself through infinite perspectives. And your heart, when it is open enough, becomes a location where this universal heart knows itself. This is what meditation is ultimately for, not to make you feel better, though that may happen, not to give you special powers or insights, though those may come, but to open your heart so completely that it becomes transparent to the divine presence that is always already here. And when that happens, when the heart becomes a clear window rather than a clouded mirror, you realize that what you've been seeking through all your spiritual practice has been present all along, closer to you than your own breath, more intimate than your own thoughts, never for a moment absent. Living from the center that is everywhere. The transformation that Ibn Arabi's meditation practices point toward is not something that happens in special moments on the meditation cushion and then disappears when you return to ordinary life. If your practice is working, it begins to permeate everything. The stillness you touch in formal meditation becomes accessible in the middle of a busy day. The presence you cultivate in silence becomes the ground from which you speak and act. The non-separation you recognize in deep states becomes the lens through which you perceive everyone and everything. Ibn Arabi taught the importance of what he called remembrance throughout the day. This is not about constantly repeating verbal formulas, though those have their place. It's about maintaining a thread of awareness, a connection to presence, even as you move through the activities of daily life. You're having a conversation, and simultaneously there's an awareness of the breath. You're washing dishes, and there's a recognition of the aliveness in your hands. You're walking down the street, and there's a sense of the vast stillness that underlies all movement. This continuous practice is where the real transformation happens, because it's easy to feel peaceful when you're sitting in a quiet room with your eyes closed. The test is whether you can access that peace when someone is criticizing you, when you're stuck in traffic, when you receive bad news, when life is not conforming to your preferences. This is where the depth of your practice reveals itself. Ibn Arabi described the spiritually mature person as one who can be fully in the world without being of the world. They engage with life completely, take care of responsibilities, build relationships, work toward goals, but they do so from a different center, from the recognition that what they truly are is not touched by any of it, not diminished by failure or enhanced by success, not broken by loss or completed by gain. This doesn't make them cold or distant. It makes them free, free to love without fear of loss, free to act without attachment to outcomes, free to give themselves fully to each moment because they know that what they truly are cannot be diminished. This is the paradox that Ibn Arabi embodied and taught. The more you realize the truth of non-separation, the more fully you can participate in the world of apparent separation, because you're no longer protecting a separate self. You're no longer trying to preserve some imagined entity that you believe yourself to be. You can let life move through you without resistance, without the constant internal negotiation of, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Is this enhancing my position or threatening it? You become a transparent vehicle for the divine presence to express itself in the world. And this expression is not passive, it is wildly creative. Ibn Arabi himself was extraordinarily prolific, writing hundreds of books, poetry, treatises on philosophy and mysticism and law, but he didn't do this from a place of personal ambition or the desire for recognition. He did it because the insights moving through him demanded expression, because the truths he was experiencing wanted to be shared, because the divine creativity that animates all existence was using his particular form as a channel. This is available to anyone who practices deeply enough. Not necessarily the writing of books, but the discovery of your own unique expression of the truth you've realized. Some people teach, some people paint, some people simply live in such a way that their presence itself becomes a teaching. The form doesn't matter. What matters is that you become transparent enough that the divine can move through you without the distortion of self-concern, without the filter of fear and grasping. The secret that hides in plain sight. Here is the final secret, the one that Ibn Arabi spent his entire life circling around, approaching from different angles, describing in paradox and poetry, because direct language fails to capture it. There is no distance between you and what you seek. The God you are trying to reach through meditation is not somewhere else. The peace you are trying to achieve is not in the future. The awakening you are working toward is not something that will happen to you after enough practice. All of it, the divine presence, the peace that passes understanding, the recognition of your true nature, is here, now, in this very moment. It is the awareness that is reading these words. It is the consciousness that is experiencing whatever you're experiencing right now. It is so obvious, so immediate, so completely unavoidable that it's easily overlooked. We spend our lives searching for something extraordinary, something other than this ordinary moment, and we miss the fact that this ordinary moment is saturated with the sacred. Meditation, in Ibn Arabi's teaching, is not about getting somewhere else. It is about recognizing where you already are. It is about seeing through the illusion of separation that makes you believe you are apart from the divine, disconnected from the source, on a long journey back to a home you left long ago. The truth is, you never left. You cannot leave. It is impossible to be separate from what you are. But this recognition requires a kind of seeing that is different from ordinary perception. Ordinary perception is always looking for objects, things to grasp, experiences to achieve, states to maintain. It is always in motion, always seeking, always assuming that fulfillment is somewhere other than here. The kind of seeing that reveals the truth of non-separation is not looking for anything. It is not seeking an experience. It is not trying to get anywhere. It is simply resting as what you are prior to all movement, prior to all seeking, prior to the entire project of becoming something. This is why Ibn Arabi emphasized the practice of simply sitting, simply breathing, simply being present without agenda. Because in that agendaless presence, the habitual movement of seeking begins to slow down. The mind, accustomed to always chasing after the next thing, begins to settle. And in that settling, in that stillness, the truth that was always present becomes obvious. It's like when you stop stirring muddy water, eventually the mud settles and the water becomes clear. You don't make the water clear. You simply stop disturbing it. The clarity is the water's natural state. Similarly, presence, awareness, the divine consciousness that is your true nature, this is not something you create or achieve. It is what you are when you stop creating and achieving. When you stop disturbing the natural clarity of awareness with the constant movement of seeking. Ibn Arabi taught that the greatest obstacle to realization is not that it's difficult or far away, but that it's too close, too simple, too obvious. We expect awakening to be some dramatic event, some extraordinary experience that will validate our years of practice and prove that we've finally made it. But the actual recognition is utterly ordinary. It is the awareness you've always had, the presence that has been here all along, the consciousness that was watching when you were 3 years old and will still be watching when you're 93. Nothing changes, and yet everything changes. The world looks the same, but you see it completely differently. You still have preferences, but you hold them lightly. You still have a personality, but you're no longer identified with it as the totality of who you are. You still experience pain and pleasure, but neither defines you. You are the space in which all experience occurs, the awareness that witnesses everything without being touched by anything. This is the meditation secret that nobody tells you. There is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve, no one to become. There is only the eternal now, and you are the awareness in which this now is occurring. Everything you've sought through spiritual practice has been present all along, closer than your next breath, more intimate than your own heartbeat. The practice is not about getting there. It is about recognizing that you have never left. Breathing into forever. Ibn Arabi died in Damascus in 1240, but his teachings did not die with him. They spread throughout the Islamic world and beyond, touching countless lives, igniting the hearts of mystics and seekers across centuries. His books continue to be read, studied, argued over, venerated, and sometimes condemned. But the essence of what he taught, the direct recognition of non-separation, the polishing of the heart's mirror, the remembrance that transforms everything, this cannot be captured in books. It can only be experienced. What Ibn Arabi offered, and what remains available to anyone willing to practice with sincerity and dedication, is a path that does not require belief. You don't have to believe in God or spirit or consciousness or any metaphysical framework. You simply have to sit, breathe, pay attention, and if you do this consistently, patiently, without expectation of quick results or dramatic experiences, something begins to shift. The density of your separate self begins to lighten. The boundaries you've taken for granted begin to soften. The presence that has always been here, waiting beneath the noise of your life, begins to reveal itself. This revelation is not the end of anything. It is not a final achievement after which there is nothing left to do. It is, instead, the beginning of a new way of being in the world, a way that is grounded in depth rather than surface, in presence rather than distraction, in love rather than fear. It is the discovery that the ordinary moments of your life, the breath entering your lungs, the sensation of your feet on the ground, the sound of rain on a window, are doorways into the infinite. That the sacred is not hidden in some distant realm, but is woven into the fabric of every moment, waiting only for the eyes to see it. Ibn Arabi's meditation secrets are not secret because he kept them hidden. They are secret because most people are not ready to hear them, not ready to undertake the practice that would reveal them, not ready to face the dissolution of self that true meditation demands. They prefer the comfort of their familiar prison to the vast freedom that terrifies the ego. They prefer the drama of seeking to the simplicity of finding. They prefer the story of themselves as separate individuals on a spiritual journey to the recognition that there is no journey because there is nowhere to go. But for those who are ready, who are willing to sit with discomfort, who are capable of tolerating the death of who they thought they were in order to discover who they actually are, Ibn Arabi's teachings offer a way. Not the only way, perhaps, but a profound one tested by centuries of practitioners, validated by the transformations it produces in those who apply it deeply. A way that begins with something as simple as observing your breath and ends in the recognition that you are the breath of the divine, breathing itself into form. Sit, close your eyes, feel the air entering your body. Notice the pause at the top of the inhale. Feel the air leaving your body. Notice the pause at the bottom of the exhale. And in that pause, in that tiny gap between breaths, let yourself fall into the vastness that has always been here, that will always be here, that is here now, saturating this moment with presence so complete that it requires no name. This is the secret. This is the practice. This is the way. Everything else is commentary.